This is Sonia Shekun. I'm a New York qualified lawyer and the commercially savvy lawyer here on LinkedIn and YouTube. So it's been a minute since my last video. I blame the holidays and the fact that my house has been painted, so very disruptive. Couldn't continue this as I wanted. But I'm here now, and it's January 11th, 2022, and today we're going to discuss the definitions and interpretation section in your contract. So a quick recap of what we've covered so far. We covered the top of the contract, the parties, doing your due diligence, recitals, and the bit in between, the now therefore clause. And now we're going to talk about the importance of the definitions and interpretation section. So why you need it, where you put it, etc. So obviously definitions, we all know what definitions are. These are the defined terms that you will use in your contract, depending on whether it's a lease or a facilities management contract or a service agreement or a license agreement. You're going to define things like, if in the case of a lease, you're going to define the address and the unit, if it's only one unit or if it's a whole building, or if it's a commercial space, the actual space, and you might want to include the plan for the space in your contract and incorporate it by reference so that it's part of your contract. If it's a technology agreement, you will define the technology as it is today and then make provisions for any iterations after. Like, as we all know, software is upgraded regularly, technology is upgraded regularly. So you would define your software and or technology in that section and provide for the upgrades. Another thing you can do here is define your articles. So different firms and companies have different in-house styles. So you need to be alive to those in-house styles and trends and formalities. So I come from the school of thought that you define article or clause, subclause, subarticle, schedule, etc. in your definition section, so that throughout the contract, it's any reference to an article is in capital letters. So it would be Article 1, Article 2, or Section 1, Section 2. It doesn't really matter how you do it. And then schedules might have a separate definition, and then there you might incorporate schedules by reference in the definition section, so you don't have to deal with it every time you reference a schedule in your contract. Territory is another thing you might define. If it's a New York contract, you will define it as in New York, or if it's a licensing deal, which I've done a lot of, then you might define the territory as whatever country. So at Orbit, it would have been 26 countries of the Middle East, sometimes Australia, sometimes Great Britain, depending on the deal. Another thing that you can define here is the definition of best efforts or commercial efforts. I rarely, if ever, have seen this, but in a previous note I've written on LinkedIn, I noted that one of the solutions around the confusion around what best efforts means or commercially reasonable efforts can be solved by trying to define it. But good luck, I've never done it. You might know how to do it properly. You might define yourself into a problem there. So tread carefully with definitions that may cause problems down the line. For me, I typically put the definition section in the body of the contract. They'll be the first block. So I have a definitions and interpretation clause and section rather, or in bigger contracts that might be several like 100 pages long, you could see the definitions and interpretation clause in a schedule or an exhibit to the contract. Which is, I don't like that, but to each his own. As long as you've got the definitions in there, Some people like to define parties. Each party shall be referred to as a party, capital P in quotes, and party individually and parties collectively. In Great Britain, I've seen that a lot of British contracts don't assign a definition to parties. So it's important to, when you're about to conclude your contract, to make sure that you have referenced all your definitions properly. You might want to do this as a separate exercise yourself, or give it to a junior lawyer to train their eye for detail. Ask them to just do a search for all the defined terms in the contract, and make sure they're using them properly. And also note that some defined terms will not always be in the definition section. So for example, as we introduce terms in the recital section, we might define it in the recitals and then not to reiterate the definition in the definition section. You can choose to do that if you want to be have an inclusive definitions and interpretation section. But it's important to have a thorough one, and this ensures that everybody is on the same page and knows what is meant by the X, Y, and Z mentioned in the contract, and the subject matter is clear, and there's no confusion and no room for bickering later on. So I hope you find that helpful. If you need help with your contracts, I'm always available, which makes this attorney advertising. If you have questions, if you're a junior lawyer or you have any questions about contracts and you're not a transactional lawyer, I'm always happy to answer questions. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, and Happy New Year, and see you in the next video. Thank you.